Alright guys, I'm going to do a vintage deck tech today. This is the deck that I've been playing more than almost any other deck. I've had an extreme amount of success playing this deck right now. I've now changed the sideboard a little bit. I've been playing it even more, edited a few different things, and so far I like it. And I'll just kind of give you the rundown on where the deck is at right now, etc. So here's the core of the deck, 60 cards. We run 16 lands, a couple basic islands to dodge Wasteland. We're playing 7 fetch lands, 3 underground seas, 2 volcanic isles, and then a Library of Alexandria and a Tolarian Academy. Um, the Tolarian Academy can tap for quite a bit in this deck, maybe not quite as much as a Storm deck, has maybe a few more artifacts, but we're playing full Moxen, as well as Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Black Lotus, Voltaic Key, Time Vault, and Sensei's Divining Top, which is more than enough artifacts to be able to get our Tinker Blightsteel Colossus combo off. That is probably the quickest route to victory in this deck. As far as the control suite goes for counter spells, I'm running lots of mana drains. Most people don't like mana drains, but I feel like in the current metagame and is just in general, mana drain is a really, really strong card. If nothing else, that it's a counter spell. It can actually hit permanents that are very scary. Monastery Mentor, all of the Eldrazi cards, big Haymaker spells like the Jace the Mind Sculptor, and other things that you typically have to use your Force of Will on. So instead of just having the 4 forces to deal with those kind of cards, I've now got 3 mana drains over the top. It makes hands where you get something like this in your opening hand absolutely disgusting. Though it's a little slower than Flusterstorm, I've found that these cards are very, very weak in certain matchups, and I want to have a good game one, and Mana Drain is almost bad nowhere. And it really gives me an interesting way to kind of combat the Gush decks and stuff like that, which I'll talk about a little bit later as I move through the deck tech here. But 3 mental missteps and 4 force of wills gives me 7 free counter spells. The Miser Flusterstorm there that could potentially just be another mental misstep, but I have liked the single Flusterstorm over the 4th misstep so far. But there you have it, 11 counter spells for my protection suite in the main deck. And my next column here is just ways to find cards. Sensei's Top, 2 Preordains, Ponder, Brainstorm, a Thirst for Knowledge, Vampiric Tutor, Mystical Tutor, Demonic Tutor. The tutors are pretty self-explanatory. Mystical Tutor, I guess not as good as the Vamp Tutor, but being able to find Tinker and Yawgmoth's Will is absolutely huge. The fact that their instant speed is huge, that's why Seal's not quite as good. There's a lot of reasons Seal isn't quite as good as either of these 2 cards, but the instant speed is actually very, very relevant. These are the cards that get me to the cards I need, let me cantrip into my power cards incredibly cheaply. Thirst for Knowledge gives me a second Brainstorm type effect in that it can get the Blightsteel Colossus out of my hand, especially pretty much when you have a Tinker in your hand, you're stuck with a Blightsteel on top of the 2 Jace the Mind Sculptors, as well as Dak Fadens to discard them. So it just gives me one more little extra bit there. It's also just a generally all-purpose decent card in this deck. Though it is maybe one of the weaker cards in the deck, I will pull it quite often in my sideboard matchups. It gives me a nice easy slot to bring in better cards in those matchups, but it's decent against the entire field. So I have quite a few artifacts, so it's not that bad. And I just like having a kind of similar to the Mana Drain, I like having a card that's pretty much live against all decks. As well as when you don't have enough sideboard cards and you have too many crummy cards in your deck that you want to be able to pitch out, it's not so bad to have an extra effect like this. As far as my big Haymaker, draw, card advantage type spells, we've got 2 Jaces, 2 Dak Fadens, 2 Notion Thieves, a Dig, a Treasure Cruise, a Time Twister, a Time Walk, and a Recall. Recall pretty standard. Time Walk excellent in this deck when you're playing the Blightsteel Colossus, as well as early game tempo, getting to play it early off of a Mox to set up more powerful turns, and also the combination of Time Walk plus any Mox makes it much easier to get the Mana Drain online before opponent gets a turn. Time Twister, not typically seen in this kind of build all that often, but it pretty much instantly wins you the game with the Notion Thief. And unlike Wheel of Fortune, it's not going to fill your opponent's graveyard so that they can kill you with Yawgmoth's Will. I've been very, very happy with this card, and I actually don't pull it very, very much at all. I've tested pulling it a couple times, but it's just too good. The combo potential is incredibly good. It's very easy to get a lot of Moxes and then just twist her out and then sit behind a Force of Will. Definitely good card advantage in that. You can get hands where it's simply like something simple as just Mox. I had a hand earlier today. It was Mox Land, Time Walk, Black Lotus, Time Twister, and you just get to lay down a Mox to make an extra land drop, and then you just get a Twister out. And I had a Force to protect it. The guy tried to force the Twister. I forced back. You're gonna make some nasty, nasty plays with that. Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time. This deck is playing lots of counter spells. It's playing a few cantrips. The Dak Faden is obviously filtering the yard. So we've got plenty of ways to fill our yard to make those two spells absolutely excellent. The Notion Thief is absolutely backbreaking. It crushes the blue decks. You can cast it in response to Brainstorm, a Jace activation, a Gush, etc. And it pretty much is a must be dealt with card. And it's a must be dealt with card that does not get hit by the mentioned as before Flusterstorm or Mental Misstep. It pretty much is a must be forced or maybe a sideboard Pyroblast, which I've actually moved away from here, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But it's a little bit harder to counter, and it completely shuts those decks down cold. I really, really like this synergy with Notion Thief and Black Lotus. Being able to Notion Thief on your first turn with Force Backup is absolutely game-breaking against the blue decks. It also has a very, very nice synergy with Dak Faden, obviously. You plus Dak Faden targeting them. They discard 2, you draw 2. That's as game-breaking as Time Twister, assuming that they don't have the board presence to kill you and you don't need to instantly win. So very, very good. The Dak Faden as well is also very good against artifact-heavy decks. Being able to steal their quick mana is very good, as well as, I guess not as important as it used to be against the Stacks-type decks, since they've kind of moved a little bit more towards Eldrazi. But it's definitely very good to be able to steal the random Lodestone Golem when they play it, as well as their other threat cards that are artifacts. But just a very, very good card in general. Stealing Soul Rings, Black Lotus, forcing people to crack Black Lotus when they don't want it, stealing Moxen, and just crafting your hand and getting you to the correct cards that you need, as well as comboing the Notion Thief, just makes it very good. A couple Jace the Mind Sculptors in the main deck. Another great card advantage engine that happens to be able to be powered out by some of this broken mana and go over top of people. Using its minus ability to deal with creatures is very good. Plus, the +2 is very, very good in this format, where you can get rid of very, very powerful cards. And obviously, the Brainstorm engine is self-explanatory. Tinker is disgusting this deck because you can obviously tinker out your Vault Key combo, as well as your Blightsteel Colossus being maybe the main target. There's actually less Dak Faden than there used to be, as I just mentioned, because it's not as important against the workshop decks anymore, which I think has just made this Tinker Blightsteel package even stronger than it was before. And because I have the Dak Faden, it also makes Tinker for Blightsteel against me weaker, because I could potentially just steal their Blightsteel Colossus. So that is definitely something to be noted. Yawgmoth's Will is obviously Yawgmoth's Will. It just wins the game out of nowhere. Can let you time walk again and set up your Tinker. Just draw tons of cards and get massive board advantage. It's a very, very good card. As far as other card draw engines, the library, I guess, could technically just be dropped in this pile, since opening hand library, I found the hard way just by playing this. It's pretty simple, but most of the times you get library, you can pretty much just trust in library and just constantly draw cards with it every single turn and just smother your opponent. It is not that difficult in this format to do at all. Moving to my sideboard, one of the main things I added is Mystic Remora. And Mystic Remora for me so far has been absolutely excellent. Before I had stuff like Pyroblasts here, and I really didn't feel like they were that great. If you look at my main deck, the only red that I really have is the Dak Faden in the main deck. Obviously, I bring in Ingot Chewers, so there's that as far as red afterwards. But I don't play a whole ton of red. I didn't really like the sideboard Mountain to fetch red just to play one of my 2 Ingot Chewers and not get wastelanded. That seemed like a complete waste, especially now that people are playing Eldrazi with the Eldrazi land, as well as Cavern of Souls and those type of decks. The Strip Mine is just far superior. But against the Mentor decks and almost any blue deck, in fact, especially on the play, a Mystic Remora is just disgusting. Against the Gush deck, especially because I have those mana drains as well as the Force of Wills, I can actually fight over their threats, force them to use their cards to try to win those battles so they can actually land a threat, and then when they do, all of a sudden I'm up in cards and I still have this Remora sitting around. Not only does it make it easier for me to win those Force of Will counterspell type battles, but it puts me in a position where even if I lose, I'm up on cards and I can easily go over the top of their head with a Vault Key combo or Blightsteel Colossus, or even Notion Thief to finish a game shortly after. Even when you're on the draw, unless they've got like a mana crypt or something that lets them power at their threat immediately. This is a card they're almost always going to try to trade their mental misstep for. Whereas I felt like getting a couple extra counterspell slots and increasing my counterspell density against only blue spells when they couldn't target very, very important threat cards was really not that impressive to me, to be quite honest. And in addition, I'm still using this Toxic Deluge. I took it in and then put it back. I took it out and then put it back in. It's just too good. It lets you deal with Resolved Monastery Mentors and other kinds of Pyromancers and threats of that nature, as well as being very good against the Tax decks, the Thalia, decent against the Eldrazi decks and stuff, since you can kill the Thought-Knot Seers and whatnot, remove their board, and then be in a pretty good position to come back and win those kinds of games. In the middle here, I've got my hate for Dredge. Molded Leyland is very, very good in this deck. Leyland of the Void is really just served me incredibly well. I haven't lost a match against Dredge in a really long time. Mulling Delay Line is absolutely gross. It means they have to have interaction to deal with it. You have plenty of counter spells to stop their interaction from dealing with it, and since we're in black with 3 Underground Seas, and mostly black is our main secondary color, playing the Notion Thieves and obviously wanting to get the Yawgmoth Well online, it's very easy to hard cast these later in the game. I've got a Nihil Spellbomb on top of that to give me just a 5th grade Graveyard Hate spell, which makes the matchup very, very easy. As well as the Nihil Spellbomb can be brought against other decks, particularly Storm. I like bringing in against just to shut down their Yawgmoth Will lines. My little last slot here is my against the Stacks type decks. I've got 2 Ingot Chewers, which are very, very good, just getting rid of their Thorn effects, etc. I've also got a Hercules Recall to blow back large boards. Nice to have that to be tutorable by my 2 tutors, as well as just having a separate effect. And then the Steel Sabotage I've actually really liked. Not only can I bring it in against a Blightsteel Colossus Mirror and bounce Blightsteel Colossus post Tinker, it's not bad against Storm as well. Neither are Ingot Chewers, to be quite honest, though I kind of like the Steel Sabotage a little bit better in that it pitches to force. If I do get the mana up, I can counter their defense grids they bring in. Bouncing it back is really not all that bad as compared to just evoking an Ingot Chewer. And so far I've been really satisfied with being able to Steel Sabotage Black Lotuses and Moxen and whatnot. Just passing and them thinking that they are good to drop their mana and go, and then just get slammed by the Steel Sabotage. And then the Strip Mine, I don't really feel like the basic mountain is very much needed against the Wasteland. Like I said, I've got 2 Volcanic Islands in my main deck already, and if I'm fetching one out in those matches, I'm probably going to be immediately casting the Ingot Chewer anyway. Either that or I'm just holding the fetch land out until I get a use for it, unless I'm doing something else with it. I very rarely want to use one of these 4 Scalding Tarns to bring out a basic mountain. And that basic mountain just doesn't tap for mana, blue mana, and this deck is almost all blue. However, Strip Mine, I feel like has been great in the current meta. Great against the Eldrazi decks. You can kill their Soul Lands. You can kill their Eye of Ugin, which lets them power out things really quickly. And almost more importantly, you can kill the Cavernous Souls coming out from those decks so that you're actually able to counterspell the stuff they play. Now, obviously, they can play the Cavernous Souls and immediately activate it before you can Strip Mine. But in general, I've been more happy with Strip Mine. It's also, in my opinion, not so bad to pull the Strip Mine in against Storm, just because they're a very land-light deck, and denying their mana is very, very important. And then the last Pure Storm hate card is Arcane Labs. It's very, very difficult for them to deal with this card. They usually don't play very many cards that can deal with Arcane Labs, aside from eating it out of your hand with a Duress effect or something like that. Once you stick it, they might have like a Chain of Vapor or something to deal with it, but it makes it very difficult for them to get anything going. That they don't have a lot of ways to go find answers, and even if they do, they've got to take one turn, find an answer. Duress, can't immediately after their Duress to clear the way for counter spells, get rid of it. It's just a card that just kills the Storm deck absolutely and completely when you resolve it. But I've been having a lot of fun playing this deck, and I've been winning a lot with this deck. I've been playing it in the Swiss tournaments as well as in the tournament practice room, and as of right now, this is definitely my favorite deck. Grixis Notion Thief, and if you want to play Vintage or maybe get to play Proxy or something, I highly recommend trying to play this deck. I've really liked the recent changes I've made to this deck. Specifically, this Mystic Remora has just done more than even my expectations were. And the other thing that I really liked about the Mystic Remora was that in a lot of those matchups, I feel like adding counterspell density and removing the already good draw density wasn't so good when I can just pull slower cards that are really bad against things like Mentor, that you pretty much have to have broken mana with to win. In those matchups, if you already have the broken mana, you're already in a really good position to make big plays. And just being able to quickly, if you take out cards like this, or even the Dak Faden, depending on how they're built or what you see in the first game, to bring in Mystic Remorse has been very, very, very good. Even in mirror type matches, the Mystic Remorse has been excellent. So that is my deck for now. Hopefully I will be, 6015, there we go. Hopefully I'll be uploading some videos of me playing this deck, potentially me playing this in some of the Swiss rounds I've played. And I'll be bringing you some videos of me playing this deck, but as of now, I really, really like how I'm built. Some of the things that I guess people aren't doing as much of, like the extra mana drains, and playing the Time Twister in the main, and things like that. I've actually really, really liked, as compared to what most people do. I haven't liked the extra Flusterstorms in the shell very much at all. But that is my deck as of right now. Mox